All right. That's fantastic. I love a learning crowd. I love a learning crowd. Never ashamed, never afraid to speak and to share their ideas. It's great. It's great. You start people talking, they're not going to stop. All right, let's get some answers. Oh, God, it's like a tsunami of people talking. It's the ones at the back. It's always the ones at the back. Okay, let's get some answers. Who's got a great professional challenge they want to share? You had your hand up, sir. You did, no? Okay. Yeah, everyone's talking and suddenly it goes very quiet, doesn't it? There is somebody. We're not going to go forward until... Yes, go ahead. You tell me, I will tell the rest of the room. Go on. Developing a culture of learning. Yes, a lot of nodding heads. Is that something that we can do, or who else needs to be involved? We can. It takes time to change a culture. I would say I'm not sure we can do it by ourselves. I think we need to get other people on board to make it happen. But great challenge. Good luck for 2020. Any other big challenges? Yes. Stay relevant, deliver value. That's got to be what we're about. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Anything else? Yes, over here. I'm getting some exercise this morning. Go on.
Teaching kids critical media literacy.
Wow. Great voice as well. Thank you. Teaching kids critical digital media literacy. Yeah. Why is that so important?
Kids are reading a lot. They're spending a lot of time online, and they need to know how to navigate the bullshit.
They need to know how to navigate the irrelevant, undoctored bullshit that's out there. Thank you. Yes. Well said. They do. My kids are really good, and they'll get up some search results, and they will tell me, Dad, of these 10 search results, that's the one to look at. And they have a whole series of clues that I'm not aware of for choosing stuff that is relevant and pertinent and reliable. So I think actually we can learn both ways. But yes, we all need to know how to do a great job. So look, we're proving value, we're staying relevant, we're building the next generation, and we're building a learning culture. It looks like we're going to have a great 2020. I'd like now to introduce our panel. Let's get them on stage. Come on, let's go on stage. Okay, Audrey, you're here. We've got a great panel here to discuss really the future of education and learning for adults in the context very much of the technology which we have around us today. So we have, I'm going to go from left to right. So we have Iyad Rahwan, who is the founder of the Center for Humans and Machines at the Max Planck Institute. He's also Max Planck Institute, I should say, for Human Development. He's also an associate professor at MIT Media Lab. Wei Cui is the co-founder and chief scientist of Squirrel AI Learning. And Audrey Waters is an independent author and scholar with a book coming out shortly talking about how we have constantly been overpromised with learning technology that has then failed to deliver. I've spent 20 years in my industry, and I recognize very much what you're saying, Audrey. Ladies and gentlemen, your panel. What we'll do next is we're going to kick off with Iyad. We'll kick off with his talk, and we'll go along the panel. While they're talking, they'll talk for 15, 20 minutes. I'll be monitoring Twitter, throw up your questions, and I'll make sure that I ask them either at the end of the session or when all three speakers have spoken. But now it's time for me to sit back, get the conference started. Iyad, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I believe this is the clicker. So, thank you for the kind introduction. I want to talk to you today about research that we've been doing to try to understand or lay the ground for understanding the impact of AI on work. And it turns out there's lots of guesswork. And as you know, there's a scary article every second day talking about how computers are going to take our jobs. But we really don't have much data to back all of this up or to even investigate what this question means. So A bit of background about myself. I'm a computer scientist by training, but I now work in an Institute for Human Development. I'm one of the directors, which has traditionally been run by education specialists and psychologists. And the reason they hire the computer scientists is because we bring tools from computer science, cognitive science, and also physics to try to shed light on questions that have to do with the impact of technology, information technology, on human society, the economy, social interaction, and so on. So today I'll talk to you specifically about the future of work, and many of you may be familiar with some of these classic books now about the rise of the robots and machine learning and its impact on automating various tasks. So my colleague at MIT, Eric Brynjolfsson, and Andy McAfee have written one of those most popular books, The Second Machine Age. And one of the things they said is people are racing against the machine, but many of them, this is a losing race, because you can't do the repetitive tasks that machines are really good at better than machines. The answer is to race with the machine, so to complement what the machine can do. But the question is, what is that? So I'm going to show you some kind of fear-mongering, if you like, some scary things about long-term kind of predictions about which jobs machines are more likely to take or to replace. And this is a study from Brian Osborne at Oxford University that was extremely popular at the time. The study basically, what they did is they took job descriptions. They brought a panel of experts in machine learning and AI, as well as other fields, and they asked people to guess what is the chance that, given your knowledge of the technology and robotics and machine learning, what is the probability that a given job will be automated? And these people came up with some probabilities, and then they used, interestingly, they used AI to actually do prediction based on this data. So AI is predicting what AI in the future will take people's jobs. And they came up with these numbers. So for example, here we have recreational therapists would have a very low probability of being automated, or first-line supervisor of mechanics. On the other hand, things like tax preparer, cargo and freight agents, watch repairer, will almost certainly be automated in the near future, near to medium future. That's what they said. Now, these numbers are a little bit challenged, contested. There's been lots of other studies after that try to improve it, but more or less the story is the same. Some jobs are much more susceptible than others, and that the distribution of these jobs is a little bit bifurcated. So in the following sense. So this is the probability that a job is going to be computerized on the x-axis, and on the y-axis is the national employment, right? This is in the US, I believe. And as you can see, there are lots of jobs on the right side and lots of jobs on the left side, and not much in the middle. So what this says is there are lots of jobs that are at great risk, lots of jobs that are safe, and nothing in between. And what you worry about is that the jobs on the right look more reddish, right? They have these warm colors. So there's certain types of jobs. So for example, service, sales and related, office and admin support, as well as farming and fishing and forestry are at a higher risk, whereas you could see that education, you guys are safe, legal, community service, healthcare, and so on have a lower probability of being automated. So the question now then becomes, well, suppose this is true, and I think a version of this is true, then how can we get the people on the right to move to the left? So how can we get the people who occupy all of these positions, all of these jobs, to move to the other side of this histogram, this distribution? And is it a smooth ride? In other words, if we want to get them from the bad jobs that are at risk to the good jobs that typically are also better paid, how do we go about doing this? Is this a big jump? Is it a small jump? And so on. So in my research group, what we've done is we were trying to map what does this actually mean at the level of skills. And this has never been done before, because this idea of the hollowing of the middle class, the fact that these people with the middle paid jobs, there's not so many of them, fewer. And the typical story is something like this, that economists tell. So economists will use wages as a proxy for expertise. So they would say, well-paid jobs are growing, as this thing shows. So in all of these countries, the high-paying jobs, the ones in brown, are growing. So there's a percentage increase in the proportion of these jobs. So that's good. Then you also see that low-paying jobs are also growing in proportion. But middle-paying jobs are going down, right? So they're actually losing market share, if you like. And that's kind of how you model or how you describe the hollowing of the middle class. But this is where it ends. But then we don't know what are these jobs? What are these middle jobs? What are these high-level jobs? Can we add some more texture to this picture? Because adding texture will allow us to say, well, what skills do we need to bridge this gap? So this exercise that we did has to do with networks, and I'm going to try to explain a very complex concept here, but hopefully in simple terms. The idea is that jobs, for example, these are example jobs on the left, accountant, insurance underwriter, crane operator, bus driver, and there are hundreds of these job categories. Jobs are composed of skills. So, for example, an accountant needs to know math, but also programming, and a whole lot of other things, but relies heavily on these two. Similarly, an insurance underwriter needs these skills too. A crane operator, on the other hand, might rely on multi-limb coordination, spatial orientation, being able to be very good at orienting objects and kind of judging distances and so on, and so does a bus driver. So you can take this, and this is a simplified cartoon, and you could build a network of skills that tells you which skills are complementary. So they always appear together in the same job. So, for example, math and programming have a strong connection because they complement one another. Jobs that require math often require programming and vice versa. You could say the same thing about these two skills, multi-limb coordination and spatial orientation, again, because they constantly occur together. Maybe something like programming and multi-limb coordination are a bit less likely to be connected, so that they have a weaker link between them. For example, in this case, only the crane operator would need both, right? But most jobs don't need both. So now if we take this approach and we conduct this exercise on 700 skills that are classified by the US Bureau of Labor Statistics or the Department of Labor, and then and the 300 job categories that they have, you get a network that's much messier than this. And the question is, what does this network look like? And I think that's where we saw this kind of surprise. If you do this exercise for exports, like you want to build a network of products that countries export together, you get something like this. These are not skills. These are products that countries export, and you could see that there is a core and a periphery. So on the periphery are things like fruit and raw materials, and in the center are these complex products that rely on one another. And we thought we were going to see something similar with skills. But what you see is something like this. It's a barbell, right? There's a big cluster on the right, a big cluster on the left, and a very thin bridge in between. So to remind you, every dot here is a skill. There's 700 of them, and the connection says that these two skills complement one another. And then we ran a clustering algorithm, which then generates this picture, and it shows you that there are two separate clusters. The cluster on the left has all of the skills that are social, managerial, analytical, like analytical problem solving, persuasion, management of conflict, and things like that. And on the right, you have sensory physical skills, like psychomotor skills, hearing, vision, glare sensitivity, things like that. And this was concerning because for us, this means that there are two islands, and you either sit in one of them or the other. And there's only a small bridge between them, so you cannot easily transition from one to the other. That was our hypothesis. And in fact, this kind of polarization you notice at the level of jobs as well. So we've done this analysis with jobs. So in this network, up the top, every dot is a job, and two jobs are connected if they're similar. Again, they're separated. And of course, we did some analysis at the level of cities, and what we want to do is we want to see which, in the case of the United States, where do the cities lie in this space as a whole, not just individuals in those cities. And I'll show you some kind of concerning picture. So you can take a dishwasher and say, what skills does a dishwasher rely on? And map it on this space that we built, this map. So think of this as a map, that shows there are two islands. And the question is, which island does the dishwasher live on? And it turns out the dishwasher lives mostly on the right-hand side, the sensory physical island. And this is the median income of a dishwasher in the US. Taxi driver has a few more skills on the left. So the ones colored in black are the ones that are used in this occupation. You could see now a chiropractor is a little bit more to the left, right? More increasingly so, but also paid better. And finally, a chief executive almost lives exclusively on the left island. And this relationship between income and the extent to which you rely on the skills on the left island is actually very robust, and there's a strong correlation between annual wages and the percentage of cognitive skills that you have. So there's the dishwasher, there's the taxi driver, chiropractor, and CEO. Now you could do the same exercise at the level of a city. So you say, I'm not just interested in whether a person is stuck on the bad island, but whether a city as a whole is stuck on the bad island. So you take all of the employment statistics of the city, you disaggregate it to the skills, and then you project them on this network. And you get something that looks like this. So I'm going to give you 3 examples from the US. This is Yuma, Arizona, a farming community. Detroit, it's struggling in between the two. And then finally New York. Very much comparative advantage of New York is in the cognitive and social skills. And again, these are the cities as seen on this plot that includes all of the cities in the US. Again, very strong trend. And as it turns out, education correlates very strongly with where you live. So this is the correlation between education level and the extent to which you rely on the skills on the right or the left. So you can see that education gets you to the left. And indeed, this is the case of different degrees, high school diploma, bachelor degree, and a doctoral degree. So with a bachelor degree, you already make a big jump to the good island. And the final piece of this puzzle is, well, does the fact that this network is polarized, does it actually make it difficult for people to move? So these are actual job transitions from the American Community Survey. This is a person who started off as a mechanical tool setter and then moved to a new job as a mechanic supervisor. You could see that this person was able to acquire a few more skills on the left, but not so many. The person is still stuck in the bad. So this person is making more money, but is still stuck in the same kind of cluster. A waiting staff is a bit of a mix because waiters have to interact with people, they need good social skills, and they're kind of one of the few occupations that straddle both sides. And this is a sales engineer who got demoted and became a retail supervisor, but despite the demotion, this person is still in the good place, right? Because in terms of the kinds of skills they're involved in. And it turns out, and this is analysis we're doing now with Erik Brynjolfsson separately, it's still unpublished work, that it turns out that those skills on the left are the ones that are safer, they are less likely to be automated, computerized by machine learning. If you're interested in this kind of picture and you want to play around with these networks, we built a website called the Skillscape. You could visit that, the skillscape.mit.edu. You could explore different cities. For the time being, it's mostly based, it's only using US data. But let me close by revisiting our question. We start, if a person starts from the bad island, where things are difficult, pay is not very high, and the prospects of automation are gloomy, because the robots are coming and the machine learning algorithms are coming. And this person, we want to take this person to the next level, to the good island. The question is, does it look something like a smooth ladder where you can take step after step after step, or does it look like a less smooth ladder where there are big gaps in the middle? And unfortunately, the story looks like a bit like the ladder on the left. I think what this means from our perspective, and we still need to do more research to verify this, is that education is the only solution. You cannot make a jump on the job from the bad place to the good place. You need to acquire a bunch of skills wholesale together in order to make this jump. In fact, now we're developing a game, which we hope to launch early next year, in which we want to give people the ability to play this life game where you move from one job to another, and we want people to appreciate this idea that they're going to get stuck in one place unless they go and get education. So the game allows you to go get a loan for education, or go to university, or learn on the job, and we want to show people that which strategy is more effective. And with that, I think I'll close. Thank you.
Quick question. I've chaired conferences for about 20 years in this space. I've seen a lot of people wave their arms around and project for the future, but never with so much data. Very impressive.
Thank you.
And I love it. It's scary. Quick question. Are we sure that skills are the key thing here? I appreciate that's your job,
Yep.
but is that the sole and key determinant of what makes up a job? And this is prompted by a question on Twitter from Christian Berler. Thank you, Christian. Is there something else as well that we could also take into account which might help people navigate?
That's a good question. I think what the classification of skills as presented here, we relied on this classification built by economists.
Yeah.
They're not education specialists.
Yeah.
And what they do is they go to the field and they ask people about what they do on their job.
Yeah.
So what is on a day-to-day, how much time do you spend doing this, and so on? But I think that some of those skills are very vague. So
Yes.
some of them have to do with conflict resolution or acquiring new ideas. And some of them look like learning. So some of those skills are kind of meta skills. They allow you to acquire new skills, others don't. And I think we still lack a good science of mapping this process. So I've used the best data available now, but I think there's much more work to be done. There are companies that are trying to scrape CVs,
Yeah.
scrape job descriptions, but even those don't really do justice to the actual process of doing work. So ironically, a lot of people are thinking about using AI to observe people in the workplace to extract this kind of knowledge about what is work,
Right.
what is it that these people do or know. And I think we're not there yet, but we're hoping to get there.
That's fantastic. But there'll be more questions, I'm sure, but for the moment, thank you very much. Now I'm going to ask Dr. Wei Chi of Squirrel AI Learning to step up and take us through some of the applications of AI in an educational setting. Wei.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Wei Cui. I'm from Squirrel AI Learning, headquartered in Shanghai. Today, I'm very glad to be here to share what we did in the past 4.5 years and our opinion in the future education. So my topic is about the developing a super one-on-one tutor with AI and big data. So first, I would like to give you some sense of the education market in China. Because the reason is that most of you probably come from, I know you from all around the world, but most of you probably from Europe and from the US, and also the UK. But however, the Chinese education market is different from the other places in the world. Especially the education market, the Chinese education is very, very competitive in China, because there is such thing called the college entrance exam. Every family wants their kids, their son or daughter, to get to the quality universities or colleges, which means that they can get a better job in the future. So this picture shows that the top 5 education companies in China, and all of these companies are doing the after-school tutoring business. This is the reason I just mentioned, because every kid, every family thinks that their education in the public school is not enough, so they are sending their kids to the after-school tutoring, the learning center to pursue further education. However, we found that the top 5 education companies in China only represent less than 5% of the market. So which means that the education market in China is very segmented. Probably you can guess how many education companies in China? Or anyone can give it a try? Let me just tell you. There are about 500,000 education companies in China, according to the statistic of the Chinese government. This is just a raw. Actually, as our estimated, there are about 1 million education companies in China. So this means that the market is very segmented, and those top 5 education markets only exist in the tier 1 and tier 2 cities, which means that they could not go to further to the lower, to the tier 2, tier 3, tier 5, tier 6 cities. The reason is this. The number of the teachers could not matching the number of students, which means that the quality teachers are lacking in China, are very much lacking in China. I think it's similar to some places in the world. So this leads to several issues of education issues in China. First is the learning efficiencies are pretty low. The high-performance students, they want to learn more things. The low-performance students could not catch up with their classmates in the classroom. And the second is the learning effective could not be guaranteed because only less than 5% of the teachers are quality teachers. And most of the teachers are below the average, below the average. So they could not provide the high quality education to the students. And in our traditional classroom, in the traditional classroom, the learning is very, very linear. So every student learns the same speed, learn the same content, and that every kid is different according to this professor, which is who gave one of the most popular TED talk. Yeah, according to his talk, every kid is different, and every kid has tremendous talents. However, our current existing education could not provide such personalized education to every kid due to the shortage of quality teachers. So we are trying to solve this problem. We are trying to use the most advanced techniques to provide such personalized education to every kid in the world, to let every kid to have the quality education, to have the quality personalized education. That's what we want. So our system has 3 components. The first component is the ontology, which have the knowledge graph. We have the hierarchical knowledge graph. We also have the 9 levels of hierarchical graph. We also have the prerequisite knowledge graph. So the hierarchical knowledge graph and the prerequisite knowledge graph represent the knowledge experience of the expert teachers. And the prerequisite knowledge graph can have the connections between 2 knowledge components, which represent their prerequisite connections between them. And the second component is our interface. So in our interface, our system actually has 2 teachers. One teacher is the virtual teacher, and also we have the human teacher aside. So in our learning centers, there are 2 teachers give the personalized education to every kid. So in our system, we have the content repository. We have lots of the videos explaining every knowledge component, and we have different type of assessment questions and practice questions. And every student is our center. So we provide the student-centered education, not the traditional teacher-centered education. And our adaptive education is competence-based learning and also mastery-based learning. So there is one AI teacher and also there is a human teacher. So most of the time the students spend their learning through the virtual teacher studying the learning machine. And our AI teacher is just like a coaches. They help the students when the students need their helps. And our learning centers provide the high-tech, relaxed environment to the students. Traditional compared to the traditional education, traditional classroom, because we want the students to relax, feel different from the traditional classroom, so the student can have good mood, can have good motivation to study in our learning centers. So what have we achieved so far? Currently, we have benefit. There are about 2 million students using our system, K-12 students use our system. Currently, we have created 5 subjects contents, including the mathematics, Chinese, English, physics, and chemistry. And there are nearly 2,400 learning centers across 600 different cities in China. And most of the learning centers covered in tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 cities, not the tier 1, tier 2. Because the tier 1, tier 2 cities, there are lots of quality teachers. And we, for 2018 and 2019, for the continuous 2 years, and we have received the award, the high-tech, high-growth companies awarded by the Deloitte. There are 4 main functions of the adaptive learning system. So first, we provide the initial diagnosis of the student's knowledge state. We diagnose the student's weaknesses, and then during the learning process, our system can continuously evaluate the student's knowledge state, the learning efficiency on each knowledge component at real time, and so that we can have updated student profile. Based on the student profile, we can do the personalized recommendation. There are two types of recommendation. The first, we recommend the most suitable learning content according to the student's performances. So we recommend the difficult one to the high-performance students. We recommend the easier ones to the low-performance students, so that we let every student can study at their comfort zone. Everyone knows that there is a ZPD theory. And also, we recommend the optimal learning path to students. So in our learning process, after we diagnose the student's knowledge state, we know their weaknesses. So during the learning stage, every student only need to study their weaknesses. The knowledge component they have already mastered will be ignored. They don't need to study the master one. So for those weaknesses, we recommend the more optimal sequence for those students to learn. So every student will have a personalized learning path. So this X-ray just want to demonstrate how we diagnose the student's knowledge stage. So we diagnose every knowledge component. And after the diagnosis, we find out the knowledge state of every student. This just shows 3 knowledge states for 3 different students, even they have the same mastery rate, 80%. And these 3 students have totally different learning path because our system can recommend the optimal path for them at the real time. After the students study one knowledge component, we recommend the next knowledge component to study based on his performance, his previous performances. So every student has the personalized learning path, and also every student have personalized learning content. So our algorithm can decide how many questions that student need to study, how much time that student need to spend on that knowledge component. So for different students, for different knowledge component, students will have personalized learning content. So the time spent on different knowledge component will just like this. So, and the core part of our learning system is the engine. So due to the time limit, I just to talk about a few of them. So most important is the intelligent recommendation engine, and the second is learning analytics engine. And we also have the the other 3 in progress research work. We also want to have the robot, the chat robot, and also we have the MiBar system to capture the students' facial expression, the gestures, the eye tracing, and even the brainwave data, so that we can better understand the students' performance and knowledge stage. So we still doing lots of the academic research. We have collaborated with CMU and SRI, and also published many academic papers. And one of the important output of the academic papers is the comparison work, comparison studies, empirical studies on the human and the machine competition. So we have two group students. One is taught by the machine, the other is taught by the human. So the result shows that our machine can outperform the human teachers for some subjects. And then I would like to talk about the future study according to our previous experience, the students using our system, the AI-powered adaptive learning system. So one story is about that recently in this summer, so we went to a poor remote village in China. So their families are very, very poor, so you can according to their average salary. And so the students, there is a primary school. The students could not have quality teachers. For the past 4 years, the mathematics teacher has changed. There have changed 7 to 8 teachers, and there is one voluntary teacher still staying there. However, although he is a mathematics teacher, he needs to teach Chinese, English, and even singing to those students. So what do? We provide our adaptive learning system to them, let them to study for the summer, for the whole summer. So this shows that their knowledge state before they're using our system. We can see from that even the students are grade 6 students. However, their performance is pretty low. They're lower than the grade 4 students in the town, in the primary school in the town. So what do? What are we gonna do? Our adaptive learning system will not provide the grade 6 knowledge for them to study. Our intelligent adaptation will trace back to the grade 4 knowledge. So their students will study from the grade 4 knowledge component, and then grade 5, and then grade 6. So after 1 month study, their mastery rate has increased from 46 to 89% in 1 month, just in 1 month. So this could not be done by their human teachers. This is just an example. Yeah, and also there is another case. She is the daughter of our chairman's driver. So due to his driver, we know that he could not know how to teach her daughter. So her daughter's English is very, very poor. Not even to say he will study in foreign countries abroad. However, after starting our system for 1 month, so he will use our system after school. So every day use our system to study without any intervention from the human teachers. So after 1 year, his performance has improved a lot. And finally, he went abroad in Seattle to study in Boeing, so which means that a bright future for her. And this is not just one case. About 80% of our students who will get improved in our system after using our system for 1 semester or for 1 year. So we believe that due to our past experience, we believe that in the future classroom, the AI teacher and the human teacher will work together. They will coexist in the future classroom. But their tasks are different. The AI teacher will be responsible for the content mastery, for the knowledge delivering, for the knowledge transferring, and the human teachers will be responsible for teaching the critical thinking, the problem solving, the collaboration, effective communication, self-directed learning, and academic mindset, which are lacking in our existing education, especially in China. And another story I want to share that in the TV show about the last half year of this year, so we did a TV show. What do we do? That we do a career prediction. So we let six people from different jobs, and we did a test. And our test will predict what their actual job is. And this is the job. And we can accurately predict their career, what the career is, using our assessment. And another example, this is the twin sign of our chairman. And they are grade 2 students. They have already started programming, and this is the output. They programmed the Chinese chess and also the international chess. And also they have make a bigger challenge. They have started grade 8 physics. In China, we only started physics in grade 6, but they have started the grade 6 physics for 1 year, and they started pretty well. So what do we have achieved? Why we can do this? So because our system not only teach the students the knowledge, we also teach the student the lifelong learning capacities. So which we call the MCM system, which stands for the methodology, the capacity, and the mode of thinking. We have break down those learning points, the learning components. And we use the knowledge component in the curriculum as the carrier of those MCM. So what we want to teach our students not only the knowledge, but also the lifelong learning capacities. So that's the reason we can predict their career using our system. So we also believe that in the future education will be career-oriented. So the students, the kids, tells us what their future job, what they want to be, so that our AI machine system can provide the corresponding learning material for that student. So that's the thing, and we can see the examples. Our system has benefited lots of students in China, and we want to benefit more students in China and also in the world. Do you know how many K-12 students in China? We just benefit a small amount, 2 million. There are 200 million students in China, K-12 students in China, so we hope to help more students in China. And we have created the School AI Open AI platform, so any learning management system can connect with our system. And we have donated 1 billion student study account. So we believe that the future education will be more and more equal. And we believe that the AI techniques, the advanced techniques, because the AI system can evolve in the future, can be better and better. So we believe that in the future, the AI can revolutionize the education. The college entry exam could disappear, and the school district properties could disappear in future. And so my last word, we think that the future education will be more effective and more efficient, and every kid will have a better qualified, personalized education. That's my talk. Thank you very much.
Said at the beginning, I'll keep track of Twitter and I'll write stuff down. I've never seen quite so much going on in Twitter during a talk. A lot of conversation, a lot of disagreement. We had one talk from somebody outside the room saying, I know loads of really good teachers. How can you attack them like this? They're doing a great job. And where's your evidence that most teachers are below average? So, Wade.
Yeah, so it's like this. So I know, sorry.
We deliberately want to start OEB with making people think, so that's why we have challenging topics, but it's only fair to challenge the question as well. Go ahead.
We believe that all of the teachers are good teachers, but however, we know that the quality teachers will go to bigger cities, the bigger cities. The tier 1 cities, the tier 5 cities teachers will go to the tier 4 cities. The tier 2 cities teacher will go to the tier 1 cities if they become better and better. So actually in China, most of the quality teachers are in the tier 1 cities. And but the tier 1 cities, the population of the tier 1 city, just a small amount of the Chinese market in China. Mm-hmm. So there are lots of students could not receive the high quality education, just like the example I showed, the remote poor village in China. So there are many thousands and millions of such villages like this. Yep. The students could not receive high quality teachers. So that, and also another reason is that even we have such quality teachers, and however, due to their limited numbers, due to the shortage of the teachers, one teacher could not cover all of the students in the same classroom. You know that most of the schools, one teacher will teach over 80 or 90 students in the same classroom.
8090.
Yeah. So the quality of education could not be guaranteed. Okay. The learning effective could not be guaranteed. So that we want to help those. So that which means actually we are not providing study services in tier 1 cities. We only provide services in tier 2, tier 4, tier 5, tier 6 cities.
That's great. Look, there are loads more questions to come. I'm going to save them to the end. Thank you very much, Wei.
Thank you.
And Audrey, we have a future of changing jobs, of AI in education. Is the future bright and rosy? All right, I think that tells you everything. Audrey Waters.
I am going to kick the hornet's nest a little bit this morning. But before I do want to thank you for inviting me to OEB. I've never been able to make it to this event before. It's always coincided with the end-of-year series that I've written on hack education. But I put that series to rest for a while I focus on book writing. So I'm thrilled to be able to be here today, and I'm also thrilled that the book is almost done. I did speak a few years ago at the OEB Mid-Summit event in Iceland. And it was, I will confess, one of the strangest experiences that I've ever had on stage. A couple of men in the audience were obviously not pleased with my talk. They didn't like it that I admonished some of the speakers about using the phrase Uber for education. So they jeered. I can't say that I've experienced a lot of other keynote speakers at Edtech events get heckled, but if nothing else, it helped to underscore, for me, how the vast majority of speakers at these events give their talks with this kind of righteous fury about school as a factory model, often invoking Pink Floyd, which ironically is 40 years old now, but all sort of starry-eyed about a future of education that they say will be more automated, more algorithmic. And people in the audience sort of cheer that, you know, hey, teachers, leave those kids alone, and somehow magically technology is going to make all of us happier. I shared this stage that day in Iceland. It was so weird, with a person who gave their talk on how in the future robots will love us and how they will take care of us in our old age, how they will teach our classes, how they will raise our children. And while my criticism of exploitative personalized learning was booed, the crowd went wild at this robot vision of the future. And as the speaker listed the marvels of new digital technologies and the future of artificial intelligence, they claimed in passing that we can, quote, already literally 3D print cats. And folks, let me assure you, we literally cannot, right? But no one questioned them, right? No one batted an eye. No one stopped and said, hey, wait, if you have made up this story about 3D printing felines, maybe you're exaggerating the capabilities of AI. Maybe you're exaggerating our desire for robot love, right? Why should we trust you when you tell us what the future is going to look like? Why should the audience trust any of us up here, right? Why do you? And then again, why might you mistrust some of us, right? I've been thinking a lot lately about this storytelling that we speakers do. It's part of what I call the Edtech Imaginary, right? It includes the stories that we invent to explain the necessity of technology, the promises of technology, the stories that we use to describe how we got here and where we're going. And despite all the talk about our being data-driven, about relying on learning sciences, on research, much of the Edtech Imaginary is quite fanciful, right? Wizard of Oz, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain kind of stuff. The storytelling is pretty powerful, rhetorically, emotionally. We get swept up in the 3D printing of cats. I know, it happens. It's influential internally, I think, within the field of education and education technology, and it's influential externally, right? Convincing the general public about the future of teaching and learning, what it might look like, making what it should look like, and making people feel as though what's happening in schools today isn't working, and isn't working in particular ways, of course. And this storytelling hopes to set the agenda, right? Hence the title of my talk, Edtech Agitprop, Edtech Agitation Propaganda. Oops. Now, what are you skipping? Now, arguably, this is the most powerful, well-known story about the future of teaching and learning, right? The Matrix, whoa, I know Kung Fu. I mean, you can talk about Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk all we want, but millions and millions and millions of more people have seen The Matrix, right? And this science fiction creeps into presentations that claim to offer science fact. It creeps into promises about instantaneous learning, facilitated by alleged breakthroughs in brain science. Take Nicholas Negroponte, for example, the co-founder of the MIT Media Lab, who in his 2014 TED Talk predicted that in 30 years' time, which is, I guess, 25 years from now, you'll swallow a pill and know English. You'll swallow a pill and know Shakespeare. What makes these stories appealing, right? Or even believable to some people? It's not science, it's special effects, right? The Matrix, after all, is a dystopia. Why would Matrix-style learning be desirable? Because of its speed? Because of its lack of teachers? Because of its lack of humanity? What is it in these stories, right? The Wachowski stories and Negroponte stories. What does it mean in these stories to know? To know Kung Fu or English or Shakespeare. It seems to me that knowing and knowledge in these stories are decontextualized. They're cheapened. It's a hollowed out epistemology. It's an epistemic poverty in which human experience and human culture are not valued. So I'm finishing up my book, as I talk about all the time, right, on teaching machines. And it's a history of devices built in the mid-20th century, before computers, that psychologists like B.F. Skinner built, believing that they could be used to train people, much like he trained pigeons, and it would, in the language of his time, individualize education. And I'm going to sidestep a discussion of the book for now. You'll have to put up with me again when I go out on book tour, right? But I do want to quickly note the other meaning of the phrase, right? The one that shows up for the Google alerts that I have in a sort of a vanity effort about the phrase teaching machine, right? It is the machines that are supposedly, ostensibly being taught. Supposedly, computer scientists are teaching machines, conditioning and training algorithms, as Skinner also believed, eliciting from them optimum learning behaviors. And from time to time, my teaching machines Google alert brings up other references to our fears that students that we're teaching are being reduced to robots. A suspicion about the increasing mechanization of students' lives, of all of our lives, really. The alert is never actually to the long history of instructional technology, although my book will change that. Because we act like history doesn't matter. We forget that we've been doing a lot of this stuff for a very long time, and it's that epistemic poverty once again. And this is, I think, my great concern with much technology, particularly education technology. It's not that artificial intelligence will in fact surpass what humans can think or do. It's not that they'll enhance what humans can know, but rather that humans, intellectually, emotionally, occupationally, will be reduced to machines. We can already see this when we talk on the phone to customer support. We see this in Amazon warehouses, and frankly, we see this in adaptive learning software. Humans being bent towards the machine. Again, why the rush to mechanize? Why the glee and excitement about this story? And I think in part it's because of this Edtech Imaginary, right? Edtech Agitprop. It's the stories that we tell. And when I say we, I do mean we, right? Those of us in this room, those of us behind the microphone at events like this, those of us whose livelihoods demand that we tell and repeat stories about the future of education. Agitprop is a portmanteau, of course, a combination of agitation and propaganda, the shortened name of the Soviet Department of Agitation and Propaganda, responsible for explaining communist ideology, convincing people to support the party. It took a number of forms: posters, press, radio, film, social networks, all in the service of spreading the message of the revolution, right? In the service of shaping public beliefs, in the service of directing the country towards a particular future. To suggest that storytelling in edtech is agitprop does not mean it's some communist plot, but I want to make it clear that there is an agenda, a political agenda, and a powerful one at that. There is ideology intertwined in our technologies, and it comes with this sense of urgency. We must adopt new technology, so we're told, or else we'll fall behind, or else we'll lose our jobs, or else our children won't be able to compete, right? We must adopt new technology, we're told, in order to bring about the revolution. So one of my goals in this talk is to defamiliarize, another trick of agitprop theater, to defamiliarize some of these stories, right? To turn some of this edtech agitprop back on itself. It's my theater for you this morning. Politically, I want you to rethink some of your stories. Practically, if nothing else, I really you've got to rethink some of your slide decks. And I know that's mean, and you'll boo me again. But we have to think more critically about the stories that we're telling about the future. Stories that really are backed by powerful corporations and powerful political forces. We need to stop and realize what's propaganda, what's misinformation, what's disinformation, what's marketing, what's bullshit, and what's potentially dangerous and damaging storytelling, and really what is dystopian world building. Right? I want to run through really quickly a series of stories, snippets of stories really, and it's propaganda that I'm guessing you've heard, and you'll probably hear again, although please let me know if you hear it at this conference, because we'll have words. I'll come with you, we'll have words with the person who said it, right? Because I think that these stories are built on no more science than Neo's Kung Fu, and that Negroponte's Shakespeare pill, right? You know these stories, right? None of these is true. None of these is indisputably true. At best, we can shrug and say you can't really verify them. We don't know what the future holds. We can build predictive models, sure, for sure, but that's not what these are. That's not what these are. These are stories that get told to steer the future in a certain direction. Alan Kay once famously said, the best way to predict the future is to build it. And I responded, actually more accurately, the best way to predict the future is to issue a press release, right? The best way to predict the future is just make up statistics in your talk. Why not? These stories might work for some people. They can be dropped neatly into narratives, heighten the urgency to get institutions to adapt to a changing world. That's agitation propaganda. Many of these stories contain numbers. Somehow we read that as being based on data, but they're often cited without sources. So when you dig, there really aren't sources. There's often really no indication of where the data came from. I don't have a lot of time, and I'm just going to refute these stories very quickly. I'll post the links to the research on my blog. And certainly on your own time, you can verify them. You should verify them. Critical digital media literacy, right? It's not just for kids. Come on. Crying out loud, people. You know, we have to ask why these stories exist. And Benjamin Doxiador has actually provided a great example of this first one in an article he wrote, A Field Guide to Jobs That Don't Exist Yet, in which he investigates the source of this claim that 65% of children entering primary school today will end up in jobs that don't exist yet. And he traces it through appearances in the OECD, World Economic Forum materials, its invocation in Kathy Davidson's 2011 book, Now We See It, in an Australian jobs report that now nobody can find, traces it all the way back to a quip made by President Clinton in 1996. It's not a fact. It's a slogan, right? It's an invention. It's a lie. The half-life of skills is 5 years. This also has a convoluted and dubious origin. If you search for the claim, you'll find yourself sort of hopping from article to article in this sort of giant circle of citation that never really gives you the source. EAB cites, again, the World Economic Forum, which seems to specialize in churning out made-up statistics, right? But I mean, I guess that's what you do in Davos. The World Economic Forum cites a marketing blog. The marketing blog cites a John Seeley Brown book. The John Seeley Brown book, if you search its contents, contains no mention of the half-life of skills. It's fabricated. And if you stop to think about it, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. But it fits so neatly into these stories that we also tell about lifelong learning. Perpetually retraining ourselves, we're told now. We're always in danger of being replaced by a worker, being replaced by a machine. We have to keep retraining ourselves, we're told, because people no longer remain on the same job or in the same career. They're changing jobs faster than they ever have before. They're doing new kinds of work, except they're not. They're not. Not in the US, at least. Job transitioning has actually slowed in the past 2 decades, even for millennials. The occupational structure of the economy changed a lot over the past 100 years, but not so much since the 1970s. Despite all the talk of the gig economy, 90% of people still work in a typical standard job situation. More people are not becoming freelancers. More people are not starting startups. Of course, we hear a lot about economic stagnation. People insist that in the coming years, robots are coming for your jobs. But robots are not coming for your jobs. Management may well be, right? Employers are the ones who make the decisions to replace human labor with machine labor. But even the talk of an impending AI revolution is speculative. It's agitation propaganda. AI revolution has been impending for about 65 years now. I mean, I'm sure this time it's for real, right? One more word. Robots coming from your jobs is one side of the coin. Immigrants coming for your jobs is the other side, and it's the same coin, right? It's a coin that's used to marshal fear and hatred, to make us feel insecure and threatened. It's a coin used as a sleight of hand to distract us from profit-driven practices. It's a coin used to divide us all so we cannot join together to solve pressing global problems for all of us. Is technology changing faster than it's ever changed before? I think it feels that way, but it's debatable. Historians don't think that it's true, right? Just because we're compelled to buy an iPhone every year doesn't mean that technology is changing faster than ever. It just means we're trapped in Apple's planned obsolescence, right? We should want a future of human dignity and thriving and justice and security and care for everyone. And education is a core part of that. But dignity, thriving, justice, and care are so rarely the focus of how we frame our stories of the future of learning or the future of work. Robots will never care for us, right? Techno-solutionism will never offer us justice. Lifelong learning is not thriving when it's based on economic precarity, based on instability, based on a disinvestment of the public good. When the future that we hear predicted on stages like this turns so casually, so blithely towards the dystopian, we have failed. We have failed. And it's a massive failure in our politics, to be sure, but it is a massive failure of imagination. We have to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. I do like it when I have to think in the morning, and I've certainly been made to think so far. I have more questions than we can possibly handle in the next 15 minutes. What I've tried to do is get the questions together that have seemed to resonate most in the audience that I've seen on Twitter, the comments, pull them together, curate them so I can get the most general. There are some very specific questions. I probably won't deal with those. I'll try to deal with the most general questions, and then we'll wrap up at 11 o'clock. So the first question is, we're all talking about a different future, for better or for worse, one way or the other. Two big themes came out of the audience. One was, is it just about skills? Maybe we'll do that in a second, but another question is, who's going to fix this? If there's a dystopian future we need to avoid, or there are job issues coming up in the future, or there are teachers we have inadequate, not teachers, but we have an inadequate educational system, who's going to fix it? Individuals, corporations, the government? Where's the answer? Just want you to solve all the problems in the next 30 seconds. Do you want to start?
I mean, I want to start by saying first that I agree with Audrey that a lot of these facts that are circulating around the literature, around what is actually the problem that we're trying to fix, they're made up. It's true. And as a scientist, I feel like it's my duty to try to do the science, the rigorous science that tries to answer some of these questions. And it turns out really, really hard. It takes a lot of time, and the data is bad, and the techniques are not up to scratch, and so on. And the economists, the traditional economists, that some of whom we work with, are very conservative because they don't want to make speculations, because they're famous for making speculations that are wrong. So they just want to look at the past and describe it. But it doesn't really tell you much about the future. So they're not really helping either, to be fair. But I think the problem is, because we don't know, and because the people who know how much they don't know are too conservative and afraid to describe the problem.
There's a gap.
There's a gap, and then charlatans, come in, and there's a couple of types. There's people who want to fearmonger just because it's sensational, but then there's people who are aspirational, and who want to build potential solutions, right? And I think there's a difference between those two. I think the charlatan who's fear-mongering just to sell more newspaper ads, that's a very different thing from a person who's trying to raise funds for a company to use AI to maybe solve the problem, maybe not.
Yeah.
But the market and history will tell, right? And I think this is where I think I take issue with, it is an ideology that technology solves everything, but it's also an ideology that it doesn't. Or that, that there's all these other missing things that are more important. And I think that ideological battle is fine. It will play out, and we'll see. But I think it's just important to distinguish between those. So it's more of an attempt to try to define what is the problem and where do we look for the
You've
definition
described the problem really well. We haven't actually solved it yet. Who's going to fix it?
So I think we solve it by trying out all of these things.
All right,
So
okay.
we try out to continue with the old way and fixing politics, but we also try the technology, because we can't afford to give up on that either. And I personally wouldn't bet on one or the other, because no one knows the future.
And technology is only technology because it's new. This clipboard is a bit of technology. The pen is a technology. We don't think about that. It's only the new stuff that we think about as being technology.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm sure your answer will be Squirrel AI will solve all the problems. Is that right?
No, not at all. Yeah, there are many issues, so we are trying to solve small part of it, and
Right.
we hope more and more people will join us to make this better, to make the personalized education more and more popular in the world. So that I think that the government and the companies, the corporations should work together. I think from the government point of view, the government actually should raise the salary of the teachers. That's my opinion. Yeah,
That was one of the questions we had. Is the answer to build technology, or is it just to have a lot more better teachers?
I think both.
Right.
Both. We need a bit better human teachers, and also we need the better technologies to enhance the teachers' capabilities. So that two the human teacher and AI teacher work together will be better. We believe that 1 + 1 is better, is more than 2. Yeah, okay. I think that in terms of the companies, the techniques should be developed by the companies, not by the government. And also, we need that we know that if we want to improve the technologies, we need to have more users to use it, right, so that we can collect more data, and the more data will optimize the techniques.
Okay.
So that is what the companies will do. The company needs to do the marketing, needs to do the sales, so that more and more people using the system, using the technology, and technologies will become better.
The more data you have,
yeah,
the better you can predict.
Yeah.
Audrey, you've painted a picture of a dystopian series of myths. I loved your stories, absolutely right. But what's the solution? Who's going to fix this?
I mean, I think that some of the fixes are to reverse the last 30, 40 years of divestment in education.
So it's a political and funding issue before anything else?
I think it is. I think by making it a political issue, you make it a funding issue, but you also make it something that people commit to and recognize that this is about a collective,
right,
a collective good, a social good. And I think that that's incredibly important. And I think that one of the things that we see right now is the sort of, particularly with a lot of talk about personalization in education and elsewhere, is really the sort of heightened valuing of the individual. And we are facing a lot of global collective problems that I think that individualism is probably not going to solve. So I think that really we have to start talking about education as a public good, as a social good.
Education is a public good in the sense that it is something which is invested in by whatever, the state, the country,
yes,
or collectively,
yes,
for the general good.
That the risk of education, because education is a risk. You are sort of taking a gamble that your future self will be improved by this period, or oftentimes sacrificing wages in order to do so. You're taking a risk, and that increasingly we have asked individuals to bear that whole burden themselves. And I think that we have to understand that education makes all of our lives better. Everyone being more educated doesn't just make the dishwasher move up. It makes all of us move up.
Okay, right, I'm going to just quickly fire off some quick, thank you, Audrey. I'm going to fire off some quick individual questions, which are just for one person. Yes, okay, so Wei, first off, this is all about, at the moment, education for children. Are there plans to apply this sort of technology to adults? Are you planning to, or do you see a future in which the sort of large-scale AI system that you're talking about is going to apply to adult education as well as children?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, currently we apply it to the K-12 markets. The reason is that due to that the K-12 students will use the system more often than the adults, because adults actually don't have enough time to do to learning. They only spend spare time, but the study is the main job of the main work of the students, so that we can collect more data. So that's the reason we currently only for the K-12 markets. But in future, definitely we believe that for the adults education. Actually, in the US and in some other countries, there are some similar adults products.
It's going to happen. All right. Thank you, Jeff Corton-Bosch, for that one. David Swaddle asks, Ian, if we teach lots of people about the skills in the less valued clusters, and we have a greater pool of skills there, doesn't that just with supply and demand mean you've now got a lot of people who've got skills which are now less valuable because there are more of them?
Yeah. It's a really good question because...
That wasn't me, it was David Swaddle. Thank you.
It's a really good question, and it's a good question because it shows that the solution is not so simple because the market is a complex system.
Yeah.
And a complex system has different actors responding to conditions, and those can lead to feedback loops and kind of dynamics that you can't really predict so easily. So you can't just say, we're just going to take people and move them here because then you're altering supply and demand. The same thing with machines, actually. When people predict whether a job will disappear, they just look at, are machines going to be able to do those skills? But typically, a machine doesn't come and replace a whole person.
Yep.
It replaces part of the skills. In some cases, that makes the person doing the job even more productive, lowers the price for the things that they produce, increases demand from the market. You may actually need more people. So Jim Besson, who's an economist at Boston University, gives the example of the ATM. So the ATM actually was predicted to reduce employment of bank tellers. It actually had the opposite effect for 30 years. And the reason is, it made it cheaper to open a bank branch because the person doesn't have to spend so much time handling cash and can spend more time dealing with customers. So you could, and this costly cash handling process became so affordable and cheap that you can have lots of little bank branches everywhere. So you actually needed more bank tellers. So this is a kind of example of these dynamics that are really hard to predict, and I think that they're absent from the discussion.
Yeah, and I think it's well worth remembering that learning is a complex system in its own right, and I very often hear people say, oh, learning is this or learning is that, and having a really, really vehement argument, and they're both talking about two separate things in this very complex system of learning. Learning jobs, it's all mixed together, and they are complex interrelated systems. Audrey, do you accept that AI is going to have an effect, this is from Donald Clark, is going to have an effect, is already being used in learning at the moment? When I try to learn a language, everyone here I've spoken to, and I speak many languages really badly, when I'm trying to speak a language, trying to improve it, I now go to Google Translate, and it is so much faster than going to a paper dictionary, which I used to do. That's a really small example, but it's improved my life no end. Do you accept that AI is being used in some ways, and where do you see the boundary between it being abused and being used, or is it more that people are just telling stories about this which aren't true?
I mean, I think it's both, right? I mean, of course, I mean, I actually think when people talk about sort of the future of AI in education, I actually do think that, you know, Google search engine or any other branded search engine, which might be a sponsor of this conference, is reliant on AI. I think, but what we've done to AI is we really have turned it into this very strange fetish, where we sort of grant it autonomy and grant it agency, and give it sort of act like it's going to sort of do these sort of new and magical things. And I think it's important to remember that, you know, despite some of these narratives, right, despite the Kevin Kelly, the editor of Wired magazine, narrative of it's what technology wants, it's, you know, as the historian Jill Lepore says, machines don't drive history, people drive history. History is not a smart car, right? And so we have the ability to make decisions, to build different products, to invest in different products, to buy things differently, to think about things differently, to tell different stories. And none of this is inevitable.
It's not determined. That's fantastic. Right, we're going to have to wrap up. I'm going to ask our speakers to just summarize their thesis, what they're talking about, in a few words. Yeah.
So there are good jobs and bad jobs, and it's the transition from the bad ones to the good ones isn't so easy, but we really have no idea.
Fantastically, Audrey. Wait.
Yeah, I believe the future education will be more and more bright, and then the future education will be more and more equal, and the more and more talents will be discovered.
More talents be discovered.
Yeah.
Lovely. Audrey. There you go.
I think that we should talk about the history of education as well as the future of education, but I think we have to be a lot more critical of the stories that we tell.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. What a great panel. Thank you. Okay, we started this morning talking about the challenges we face in 2020. Yes, we have the challenges of doing our daily jobs, but I do think our panel have illustrated for us that there's a bigger challenge here, both in technology and in how we think about it, the stories we tell to ourselves. Now we're going to go into a break, half an hour to 45 minutes, and then back to the conference. Have a great conference. Thank you very much. That was, honestly, that was really good. Thank you so much. I love that data.